G'day, hi, and welcome. All right, here I am in Unico, and I'm going to turn on the lights. Lights is nice. Man, these days are getting short. I am off to Pub 1870. I got the guitar in the back. I got my work stuff there. I got some spare coats. It's actually kind of cool out. Not cool as, hey, how you doing? I'm pretty cool, but cool as in whatever. You're just going to have to make do with the camera angle. Yes, I know it's a bad camera angle. I have yet to buy a vehicle where I can get a good camera angle while I'm actually driving. Right now you are sitting in the below the cup holder. You are below the cup holder right now. So what am I going to do for tonight? Well, I want to talk to you about the seriousness of guitar polish first. This will explain the situation with my guitar. Now you guys know I'm a good looking man, I know that. But I'm just not a wealthy man, you know. I was blessed with looks, not money. And that's just kind of sometimes that's how it rolls, you know. And I'm okay with that, but I'm not just a pretty face. I do learn a trick or two. And one of the things I've learned over the years is pretty much how to break everything I own. My guitars are no exception. When you have guitars like I got, you're going to have an acoustic guitar that is very job specific, if I want to be frank with you. What I got is a guitar, and I've been as AEL10, and people have asked me about this guitar for years. And I've reviewed it several times, just because I like doing it and stuff like that. And I don't really think I've, demonstrated the purpose of this guitar and why it's such a good workhorse. Hopefully, like little Unico, my unicorn of a vehicle here. Hopefully, it'll be a good workhorse too. I mean, two more days, and this thing is paying off. Considering I only bought it last week or a week and a half ago, that's not bad, right? I only paid $400 for this, but that guitar I bought was around $400 with tax and all in 2003, 2004, whatever year it was. And I bought it with a very specific thing in mind, jam nights. Now, I went through quite a few guitars before I found the jam night guitar. The first jam night guitar I have long sold about a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, was a Epiphone G400. Basically, they look like an SG Standard, kind of, slash between an SG Standard and SG61 reissue. But they're built way down the price. Like, they were like $250, $300 new. And I bought it. And that guitar was great for certain jam nights. And it doubled back as my acoustic guitar as well. But I was finding more often than not at some jam nights, what you end up with is it's more of an open mic than a jam night. Meaning, you get on stage and everybody's got their set list all sorted out. So they don't really jam with anybody. It's like, I'm going to go up, I'm going to play a perfect set or whatever. We're not going to explore any options of making music with other people that we don't know the names of. And doing songs we never heard of. In other words, improvising on the spot, which is something I absolutely love doing. Pulling a rabbit out of the hat like that. If you get it right, it's great. If you don't, you still have fun anyway. So that guitar, yeah, that was my horn. That's Junior's parents' place. They're going to hate me after about 2 weeks with this thing. Oh, you stop honking at her. You scare the crap out of us. We're watching TV. They're old people TV. So, they got delicate hearts. This thing going around with the Queen Mary horn on it. But anyway, another story, another time. So that G400 did a really good job at what it did. So if there was drums in the room, bass in the room, another guitar player, and what have you, you could rock out a pretty good jam night. There was a couple of nights that, wow, man, that thing really put the spotlight on it, and it really worked well. Another instrument that I've long sold with the goal of getting a better one, and of course, as soon as I sell everything, that's when my financial troubles hit me. I know, cry me a river. I do have a violin, but I won't play it for you now, but yeah, that happened. So I'm now without all these instruments, but I did retain some workhorses that are what I call staples. Staples in the stable, you know what I mean? Where it's a guitar that if you were to get rid of it, you would slap yourself silly, because the of it. Another guitar I had, but it didn't quite cut the bill. It was just before I bought the Ibanez AEL 10, which now they call the AEG series. Same guitar pretty much, a few little differences here and there, but otherwise the same guitar. Well-built guitars, and the formula that Ibanez used for this guitar is really good. It has a 5-piece neck, meaning warpages. I mean, you can leave this thing in the snowbank and then go bring it in beside the furnace and it'll probably still stay in tune. It's so stable. It has polyethylene paint on it. Kills the sound a little bit. Yes, I know. I already did a video on finishes, stuff like that. But last week, when the host was had his beautiful Gibson Hummingbird with the nitrocellulose finish, he was tuning the guitar after every song just because more people had come in the room and it would change the temperature in the room, and the guitar was temperature sensitive. Not super bad, but just enough to go out a bit. Les Pauls are bad for that. Gibson Les Pauls are bad for that. Where the first 3 songs, it's like the thing just won't stay in tune because it's adjusting to the room. Then finally it finds a balance somewhere. Once your hands heat up the neck a bit and stuff like that. But this thing, nah. I mean, you put a blowtorch to it, as long as it's far enough back not to catch flames, it'll still stay in tune. And then you can throw, do the ice bucket challenge with it right after, it'll probably still stay in tune. Like, it's a guitar you can play underwater or in a furnace. How cool is that, right? It's a really good workhorse guitar. And more importantly, and all acoustic guitars, I don't care if you bought a T3 Taylor or whatever the newest model is now, the top of the line Taylor guitar or Gibson, every acoustic guitar does not come set up. I quote, and I will repeat, every acoustic guitar you buy off the shelf does not come fully set up to you. It comes with a generalized setup. They don't know what strings, if you're going to go up to 12s, you're going to stay with 10s, or you're going to go with 11s. Are you going to use a custom gauge? They don't know this. So they put a generalized setup on there. But when they do, it means your action isn't at optimal everywhere on the board. It's probably going to play well for most people who don't play past, say, the 5th or the 7th fret. Yeah, factory's good enough. But I tend to be a guy that plays my acoustic guitars very similar to the way I play my electric guitars. In other words, I'm playing up at the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd fret. If it has 20, I think this has 22 frets on it. Might be only 21. Never really counted. But I do get up there. So I need a guitar with low action at the heel on an acoustic. Yeah, that's a tall order. This guitar fits the bill. So the guitar that it replaced was the Ibanez Artcore series. Fantastic jazz box on the cheap. Also a fantastic jazz box in the sense that it was great. Like it was great sounding when you recorded it. It was phenomenal. Most hollow bodies are, with medium to low output pickups, are phenomenal recording guitars. Just tonal quality. I mean, you have this warm timbre of like an acoustic, but with the brightness of the birch body, and you've got, really soft dynamic pickups that could just handle effects so well. They were like a P90 style pickup. So when you played this thing, recorded with this thing, it was just the guitar of guitars. Wasn't the greatest lead guitar, but it was a really good, everybody's out tonight, I'm waving at everybody. It was a really good guitar for recording rhythms specifically, and with jazz strings on it, flat wound jazz strings on it, the tone of this guitar was just phenomenal. But however, it was really dull to play live. It lacked the drive of the acoustic, and it didn't have the punch, or it lacked the drive of the tonal qualities of the acoustic, and it didn't have the punch of an electric. So it wasn't really a fantastic live playing guitar. Even with the jazz strings on it, it sounded good. It didn't have that drive I was looking for. Whether I was playing through the board, which is always with a jazz box you can get away with it. With a regular electric, they don't like that when you do that. Especially with classic 57s or nickel 5s or whatever. They do tend to peak the board a bit, and you tend to come off pretty muddy. But you can do it. It just doesn't sound great, right? But the jazz box sounds okay, but it just doesn't have the drive. And the playability between the Artcore, to be honest with you, was almost identical to my AEL 10. So when I got the AEL 10, I had more projection live. I had the acoustic drive. had all the pleasantry, extra tonal qualities of the acoustic. So I was kind of like a win-win-win-win-win, and the playability was that of pretty much, I mean, you could shred on this thing. We got a couple of bikes here. Oh, four-wheelers. Driving up the side of the road. So I decided to get rid of the Artcore, which was about the same money. Would I ever buy another Artcore again, another jazz box? I'm not saying my jazz playing days are over, but I don't know anybody who plays jazz. Blues, no problem. Everybody plays Stevie Ray Vaughan or something. You'll always find a guy like that at a jam night. But you will not find a jazz drummer anywhere. You'll find a blues drummer masquerading as a jazz drummer, but you won't find it. And they are a different animal. And for, you know, to really get that purist, not that I'm a purist in jazz by any stretch of the imagination, it's a very, very, you know, tool to the job type of stuff that you're looking for. And you really want to nail it with the right drummer. You want the jazz box with the flat wounds on it. I love flat wounds for clean playing. If you have yourself a spare Telecaster, or if you only play clean all the time. Now, mind you, when you play with tube crunch on there, flat wounds are very cool. What am I talking about? Well, you'll have the most ringy, melodic harmonics. You cannot miss a harmonic with flat wound strings. You can miss them on nickel wounded strings. You can miss them on bronze wounded strings. But 10 gauge, 11 gauge flat wound strings will give you tone you've only dreamed of. It is so pinging. You will get to breakup you've never heard before. You will have it's unique. It's very unique. However, when you distort it, you will sound like early Tony Iommi, no matter what guitar, even if it's an Artcore or whatever. You play with flat wounds on and you want to sound like, you know, late 60s, early 70s Tony Iommi. There you go. That's what he was playing back in the day. He was playing, you got to understand, when I was a kid, getting 9-gauge strings was a new thing. You know, like in the 80s, everybody plays 10, 11s, 12s. I learned on 12-gauge strings most of the time. It just wasn't common. All these old, you know, Telecaster, everybody playing a Strat or a Telecaster. What's this guy doing here? It's a bad spot there. Was always playing heavy gauge strings, right? And if they were playing bluegrass or country or whatever, yeah, they always played the heavy, you know, 12, 11 gauge strings. My first electric guitar was a 1968 Harmony Rocket hollow body, much like the ES335. I do regret selling that one, but I had it for 25 years in the case. So that, you know, I'm one of those guys that used to have this mentality of never sell a guitar. You'll always regret it. And that is true. You will regret it. But when things sit there, that bugs me more than anything. To quote one of my uncles, I don't know where he got the quote, but no truer word has ever been spoken. But if you have something for more than 3 years and you don't use it, sell it, trade it, give it away, break it, burn it, do something with it. I don't know, donate it to charity. Just do something with it. Now, I tend to go a little bit longer. I tend to hang on to my stuff a lot longer than that. So yeah, it was like 22 or 25 years that I had that guitar. And I really didn't play it very much, considering from my first electric guitar when I was 13. It was only a year and a half later that I ended up with a TCM Explorer, which I've given to my sister. I don't play it anymore. I still love those guitars. They were cool. But it really didn't see a lot of mileage under me. And I got that first guitar from my uncle. But I was playing like Guns N' Roses and Metallica and all that stuff. It really, that hollow body guitar with that trainer amp, 50-watt trainer amp with the overdrive, it just really couldn't get anything. The best you could get was a Ted Nugent kind of like sound from the 70s, but you couldn't get it without the Soap Bar P90 style pickups just squealing like crazy. So it just couldn't handle the distortion, it couldn't handle overdrive, it couldn't handle volume unless you were playing clean. But once again, it was a phenomenal sounding guitar. But the neck was like a Rick Rickenbacker neck. It was just a flat taper right from the heel to the nut, and it was great, phenomenal for playing chords, and also kind of what turned me on to jazz, because it made a good jazz guitar in that sense, that you could do these suspended chords that were like from the, you know, like the 3rd fret to the 9th fret type stuff, really progressive stuff, because the scale was so short on it. It was a 21 or 22 fret guitar. I think it was a 21 fret guitar. It was, you know, it was designed for a different type of player, like Les Paul himself. It was designed for that kind of playing. It was designed for chicken picking. It was designed for really tight chording with narrow frets. So that guitar sat. Finally, one day I said I'd sell it. Because it just, I never played it live anywhere, hardly at all. You know, like it just, I don't think I ever did. But it was my first guitar, and I did buy it from a now deceased, I don't know what cousin he would have been, my great aunt's husband's brother. Whatever that makes him to me, second cousin, second great cousin, I don't know. Whatever it is, twice removed, whatever it is. I bought it from him, and I regret, because he's no longer with us, and he was a really good man. His family had some hardships and stuff like that, but you know, he's still decent people, and he gave me a really good deal on that guitar and the amp, you know, to get me going. And you know, sometimes he would just go into the music store, pick me up a different set of strings, and say, "Hey, Reg, try these. Don't worry about it." You know, he'd do stuff like that. I'd go over and he'd show me a couple of things and what have you. And for that, I'm forever grateful. You know, even though I'm a self-taught guitar player, you do pick up. You know, nobody's 100% self-taught. There's always somebody that, you know, held out their hand for you, or, you know, lended you their pick. You know, whatever. And he said something really cool, and it stuck with me for years and years and years. And I remember he picked me up a Boss distortion pedal. And when he picked that pedal up for me, he said, "Reg," he goes, "I know you wanted the heavy metal one. It was something metal. It was a DOD American metal pedal. My cousin had one, so I wanted one. And it was a really cool one. And then there was the ultra heavy metal one. That was my number 2 choice. But he ended up picking me up a Boss distortion, which at first I was kind of like, he says, that's all they had in stock. And he said, you know, at the time, you know, money was, you know, I was still a teenager, so money wasn't, you know, I worked weekends to get this. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I wasn't mad at him or anything like that. I mean, you know, I appreciated that he did this. And he'd give me all kinds of tips, watching out for shady salesmen at, you know, music stores. You know, whenever they try out a guitar and they reach behind the amp there, just watch, they might have a little booster or something in there, you know, and, you know, cheat you out of the guitar. You know, always try it unplugged first and then try it. And that stuff still sat with me. I still use those techniques today, and they were good advice. You know, this guy played, you know, he worked in the bush all day and played 3 or 4 nights a week. I mean, he was quite the musician, but he had bought a nice Stratocaster. That's why he got rid of and he knew I was looking for a guitar, my first electric guitar, and that's why he called me up. But he said, "Reg, no matter what you play," and of course, I'd only been playing for a little while, seriously, at this point, even though I've been playing since 5, I didn't really put effort into it until I was about 10. And I didn't really learn until I got my first electric, because I was twice as motivated once I got my electric. And of course, like all people, the first 2 years, you sound like crap. You know, and you think you're better than you are. Whatever, because you're trying to learn stuff that's, you know, slow down, learn the fundamentals before you worry about the fancy stuff, right? But of course, when you're young, you want to learn all the fancy stuff first, but you don't know why you're learning it. You know, once you understand a little bit of music theory, you understand why you're doing stuff. And he said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was pretty close to this, that it doesn't matter what you're playing. Rock, blues, jazz, metal, opera, bluegrass. If people cannot understand what you're playing, they are simply not going to listen. Always, always play to the very best of your ability. The instrument is the tool. The quality of the instrument is the icing on the cake. But always, always play to the... but the music is always from within. I added that a little bit. But But he was right. He was 100% right. Now, which brings me to last week. Last week, I wasn't on my game. I listened to my recordings. Now, playing live for the first time in about 5 or 6 years, or I think 2010 or 11 was the last time I was on stage. It's not the same as playing in your room. You're a little more excited, you're a little more hopped up, and you don't know what to expect and stuff like that. You don't know what your crowd's going to be like. So, yeah, I did some more jackass kind of set stuff. Played way too fast. One song I played way too fast. The Salty Dog song, I played it way too fast. Yes, it was an Irish upbeat drinking song, but that was like the death metal version of it. And when I listened to that, I was like, okay, no. I know my job too well to be pulling that kind of stuff. So tonight I got to pull it out of the hat a little bit. I'm going to try something special. And I'm playing for a crowd with a high percentage of musicians in there. And I'm not talking, their first jam night. They just learned to play the guitar within a year. I'm talking people that they're doing this while they're not playing their $600 a night gigs. You know what I mean? Maybe not everyone. And I've often said this, the best musicians in the world live in my area. You just never heard of them before. They just don't have the promotion, right? If you check out Cafe 1870 in a YouTube search, you'll see the kind of musicians I'm talking about. They're very interesting crowd. But that's okay. It doesn't mean I can't bring the 80s, 90s rock, power ballad stuff back and whatever. It's good to mix it up. You don't want to necessarily play the same way the guy that got on the stage before you. Now, this is also a good way to kind of get used to playing in front of an audience again, and behaving on stage so that you show a little bit more discipline in your playing. Now, hence brings me to the guitar sitting in the back, my Ibanez AEL10. Other guitars that I had as jam night guitars, but kind of more on the professional side, was my Epiphone G1275. That guitar, I don't care what, it's the double neck. It's the Jimmy Page double neck. It's the based upon the Gibson EDS 1275, which, yes, I've never owned, but I've played several of them, and it's close. The necks are a little nicer on the EDS, but they're close. They are very close, but the price tag is much different. Now, the Epiphones are up by $500. I bought mine for $900 new. They're now like $1,500. They're working their way to $2,000. They're a guitar that people own for a few years and then they sell. And I sold it. And I do kind of regret selling that guitar, like I do all. But after I pick up my Gibson SG, and the reason why I ended up going with the higher quality guitars was after I bought 5 cheap guitars, I realized I paid for an SG61 in reissue. And for years I've been telling myself, well, I can't justify buying a guitar that expensive because I'm not really making money with it as much, and I'm not doing this with it, and a cheap guitar will do just fine. No, buy the guitar you want, or you'll never get it out of your system. Now, here's what happens when you buy a really good quality guitar, or a guitar that suits your needs. And good quality doesn't always mean expensive. It just happens to be that the guitars I like tend to be expensive. But the B-stock guitars that do the job, workhorse guitars, are usually oftentimes guitars under $1,000. A lot of times under $800. You can buy an extremely professional guitar for $800 and cheaper. Between $500 and $800, if you know what you're looking for and you have your criteria down, you can buy yourself a phenomenal guitar to do a certain job. Maybe even better than what you think. In walks AEL10. So the AEL10 was a guitar that I didn't want to deal with the finickiness of tuning the guitar every 5 seconds because of I've played many guitars, Taylors, Martins, Fenders, Gibsons, you name the Gibson model, I've played it from various different years, and I can tell you that the guitars that sound the best are usually the ones with the least amount of finish on them, right? They make good recording guitars. They don't project as well. They're usually not as good live guitars because they don't project. Even plugged in, they just don't seem to have the drive. But they have a lot of tone, but just not the drive that you're looking for live. The other problem is that they tend to be temperature sensitive. And speaking of temperature sensitive, there's deer in the field, so be careful here. AEL10 fit my bill. When I read it had a polyethylene finish, I was like, okay, well that's cool. But when I picked this thing up in the store, I picked it up and I played it, and I'm like, okay, the tonal qualities weren't bad. And the body shape I picked is what you would call the jack of all trades kind of, I forget the name of the body style, but it's, if you look at the guitar, you'll see what I mean. It's not a dreadnought or like a J200 style guitar at all, which, you know, are really powerhouse guitars for drive, but they don't, the notes don't, they're not so great for picking. They're good for picking. They don't, you know, you can, whether you play one string or all the strings on a J200, you got a big, fat, wide-bodied guitar sound. That two bikes are going by. I want to wave at them, but I'm in my vehicle. That's funny. But the thing is that it's not as out front when you want it to be. Where a really small parlor-style guitar is way too far out front. Great for somebody who's just doing blues leads, or you know, the second guitar. So you got, say, like a J200 doing all the rhythms, and you got the guy with the parlor guitar cutting through on the solos. And it's a really out front guitar, but it's a little dry, higher mids, less drive, right? But also a little bit less tone. Doesn't mean it won't sound good. It's a different type of tone. Where the guitar I got, the AEL10, is that guitar where if you want to do leads, it will do leads quite remarkably well. So when you want a single note to just really stand out on that guitar, it will do it. When you want to play a nice warm chord and hold it together, it's not so upper mid-ranged sounding and out front that it just sounds like you know, an electric guitar on you know, on clean. You know. Now that said, the guitar, beware guitar polish. I'll just tell you that, and I'll tell you why. The AEL10, the electronics in it weren't bad. I'll be honest with you, they really weren't bad. They were basically, it's got phantom power and quarter inch, which is kind of what you want. You know, it's kind of what you want. And the cool thing about that is that the electronics with the hum canceling and everything like that, and with a moldable EQ, you can now mold the sound of your guitar even more, which doesn't make it a phenomenal recording guitar, but an okay one. You can get away with it. But if you want to drive the guitar to be more out front, you can. If you want to soften the sound, you can. And that's the beauty of active electronics. The problem is when you have one drop of guitar polish drops on the volume button and goes in and shorts out the electronics, you have to resort to a mono passive demarketing pickup, which is really, really out front, which is great for aggressive playing, but it's kind of whatever tonal qualities you're going to get, and you just got to kind of live with it. So you lose all the low ends, the mids are too high, and the high ends are just, they're harsh. And that's the problem with those type of pickups. And if you got a guy on a PA, that's not too bad. Like last week, he could do something with the sound, but you have to work with that sound, and that sound is not going to be the most stellar sound. However, if the guitar's in tune and you're playing it well, the audience will not notice. Another little strip of advice that I got is if you break a string live, keep playing. Show must go on. Even if it's a string you need, this is where music theory will help you out a bit. And if you're starting to play live again, brush up on that. Why? Because you might need to learn how to play a song 4 or 5 different ways. Like, for example, let's say you're doing a D chord, but you know where all the D chords are on your guitar. Well, you can instantly switch to another string and do a different chord shape, but play the same chord. Most people will not notice. The show will go on. That's one great thing about it. Now, ideally, the guitars I like to play live the most are 12 strings, which is at odds with most 99.999% of acoustic guitar players. They all want 6 strings. Why? Oh, 12 strings too hard to play. That's because you're not playing one that's set up properly. A 12 string is beautiful to play. Oh, but you can't do string bends. It's an acoustic. You don't do string bends most of the time on an acoustic anyway. There's maybe 5 people in my life that actually I've seen do real string bending on an acoustic. And they were playing parlor guitars doing slide and blues. That's all they were doing. So they had the tool to the job. They probably went with a lighter gauge string anyway. But even on top of that, they probably, they had a backup guitar there. They didn't have to worry, they could really just concentrate on bending that string. But that's like 5 guys out of thousands of people I've seen play, So, string bending is not really a thing. Now, a good sounding 6 strings can sound very chimey or whatever, but what you get with a 12 string is a natural chorusing sound. And a lot of people, they don't take the chance on the 12 string because they're worried about, oh my God, now you got a second guitar to tune. Now, if you have a finicky 12 string on stage, yes, that would be a nightmare because you'll find what string is out, but you're going to be constantly it's easier to upkeep on 6 string than it is on 12, right? However, if you buy the right 12 string that holds tuning very well, doesn't necessarily have to be a polyethylene body, it just has to be a guitar that can hold tuning very well. And if you understand how to string up, and a lot of people too, a lot of their tuning problems is because they don't know how to string up their guitars properly. They don't pre-stretch the strings before they go on stage. Now my strings are beyond pre-stretched because that set is about 3 months old. I replaced the set of strings that were on that guitar for probably about 3 years. So if I'm not making money, I don't change my strings. So they're always stretched and they stay in tune anyway. However, string bends are completely out of the question when you do that. And it does deaden the sound quite a bit. There's nothing like a nice, fresh, warm sounding new strings, not brand new, but just enough that you played them for about 2 or 3 hours of time to take the raspiness off them. That sounds so good. But that's just icing on the cake. The number one thing is guitar in tune and play, and how well you play. That is the number one thing. Well, the number one and number two thing. The number one thing is how well you play, but really the number one thing is how well your guitar's in tune. If you play your piece perfectly, and your guitar's slightly out of tune, it sounds like you don't know what you're doing. This guitar doesn't disappoint in that method. When I'm sitting there, I don't have to wander away and tune up the guitar, and hopefully it's on tune when I get on stage. I pull it out of the case, flick the strings a few times, and if something's slightly out, I can touch it up on stage within 2 seconds. I don't have to, it's already in 440, I never have to worry about it. And it'll just stay there. It's a great guitar that way. So when you got a guitar that does that, that's set up really well like that, you don't get rid of that guitar. Even if it might not be perfect in all things, like tonal quality is really the only short straw of this guitar. The intonation is not bad. It's not 100% in like most acoustics. There's a forgiveness that you have to have where, depending on the action's starting to get a little bit high again on it. Every few years you have to take down the bridge a little bit and do a setup. And I've yet to adjust the truss rod on that thing. It just doesn't need it. That 5-piece neck is just so rock solid. This is a guitar that can afford to get banged around a bit. Not that, and if you don't bang it around too much, I mean, it'll outlast me. You know what I mean? That's a guitar that I'm going to be handing down to my, that'll be handed down to the great-grandson's grandson if I ever have kids, or my nephew's grandkids, if he ever has kids, hopefully so. And that's because it's how you take care of it. But when you have a workhorse like that, that's what you get. Now, that said, if I start making money doing this, I will invest in better guitars. And yes, it is worth a little extra finickiness for a better sounding guitar and stuff like that. And again, expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. Purpose built is really what wins the day at the end of the tool to the job. And it takes a while in playing a lot of guitars live to understand what guitars do really well live. There's a reason why you see a horde amount of people playing Telecasters, Stratocasters, and Les Pauls. Because those guitars are pretty darn good live. There's a reason why you see a lot of guys who play Floyd Roses for a couple of years to only give up the Floyd Rose for a hardtail fixed bridge guitar. Paul Gilbert, perfect example. This guy, you never see him with a Floyd anymore. Why? Because after so many string breakages with a Floyd system, you're done with it. Unless your signature thing, like Eddie Van Halen, for example, is committed. He cannot get rid of a Floyd Rose. Almost everything he does requires it. But he has done what a lot of guys do with the Floyd Roses. Well, I want the reliability of a fixed bridge if I break a string, so they get rid of the ability to basically raise the pitch on their tremolos, and basically it's a top-mounted, basically walking tremolo Floyd Rose or Shaler or whatever they're using. So if you break a string, it doesn't matter. The bridge rests against the body. So it's not a free-floating, they don't use free-floating anymore. The free-floating is the one that gives you the most versatility, but it's also, when you break a string, your guitar is not going to be slightly out of tune. It's detuned on all strings. You're going to go super sharp, telling you from experience. So, that said, backup guitars, I talked about this before, it's really nice to have a hardtail. Now that said, as a one-man band, the acoustic is the way to go. Not that you can't do a one-man band set with an electric, but it is really hard to find a viable set list, unless you're just doing like blues originals with a slide and stuff like that, or it's really hard to pull off an electric only. Now, if you have a 12-string electric, that's a different story. You can get away with a lot with that thing. Hence why I love the G1275 so much. Again, it was a great guitar, but however, at 14 pounds, it was a little bit heavy on stage. No, not going to lie to you there. The other thing is that I still can get away with much, much more on a well set up acoustic than I can even get away on that. Hence why that guitar stood the test of time, and I've had it for over 10 years, right? My two SGs, Gibson SGs, my SG3 and my SG61 reissue, they're coming to the grave with me. Why? Those guitars, although they haven't played live yet, they are such exceptional guitars. I have done some jam nights with them, and they will see live shows, but again, it's one of those things that I'll only bring it out if I got people to jam with. But that's what I bought the cheap Flying V for, was that very purpose is, go to a jam night. If somebody wants to use, I offer this guitar to people every time I play. Hey, you want to go up and do a couple songs with mine instead of bashing on your nice Taylor? I mean, most people are going to take the Taylor. I mean, who's getting new, right? It's like, okay, that's like saying, do you want to drive my Chevette instead of this brand new Z06? You know, I get that. I do really, truly understand it. Holy Jesus, guy, whoa, slow her down. You're going to kill somebody. I'm the only guy on the planet that does the speed limit, I swear to God. Got a tractor trailer, man, everybody's got a passport. I'm doing 80, and then it's like, okay, fine, I'm good. 80, 85. Everybody else, no, we gotta do 120, man. I'm seriously the only guy in this province of Quebec that does the speed limit. I swear to God, I'm almost ashamed to say that. But I do it for the mileage, and I'm never going anywhere in a rush, so it sucks to be them, be stuck behind me. I bet you half these people are little old ladies say, "What down, the pedal on the right, sonny." You know, whatever. You know, no rush, no worry. You know, I'll get that extra 3 miles to the gallon. You know, I am a musician. You know, I don't make a lot of money here. You know, but anyway, I guess I'm babbling now, and I know you guys can't see me or whatever. So I hope you enjoyed this blog, these babble blogs. I really, last week, you know, was a lot of fun, but this week I really want to bring my A game. I got some special stuff. I won't tell you what it is. I prefer you watch the video and see what you do there. The setup wasn't bad, but there's things I got to live with what I got with this guitar. But as a jam night guitar, like I say, if I can stay later, it's just I don't like to get home too late because my dad gets up early and stuff like that. I don't like to wake him. Whatever, you know, it's just me and him now. So it's like one of those things that it's a Wednesday night, okay, and this is good practice. I don't know how many more of these jam nights I'm going to do. They do get old, because the problem is you'll find this once you, especially when you're a more experienced musician. But there's two types of experienced musicians, or a few types of experienced musicians. There's those that are really good in the studio and suck live. There's those that are amazing live and are deer in headlights when it comes to the studio, and they just can't record to save their lives. And then there's those that do everything well, and then there's those that reassess everything they do, and they do well. I will admit, I do not have a proper studio guitar. But if you're not making money, you're not going to afford a proper studio guitar. And a lot of people think, well, any guitar could be a studio guitar. You are correct. But when you play a really dedicated studio guitar, I will tell you, it will be an experience that you will not want to do live, but just in the studio. And I have played some amazing studio guitars. Some of these things were very expensive too. And it's only once you hear how... And these guitars never look great. You know, they always just look like an afterthought. But when you understand the concept behind them, you know, the lack of finish and the natural tones you get off them, and why are they so damn heavy? Why is this a 16-pound guitar? Once you record it, you understand when you hear the sustain. Some guitars just make naturally really good live guitars. Some guitars make naturally good recording guitars. Mahogany-based guitars tend to record pretty good. Swamp ash is the way to go. Usually, you know, heavy, but man, what a great sound. So with acoustics, it's the lack of finish, but then you're finicky to temperature changes, and really, you know, not a lot of outdrive or power out of the guitar, but just a rich tone. And what happens is, okay, like tonight, if I'm able to pull somebody up on stage, or somebody pulls me up on stage, because I do want to jam with other people. If I played, like, for example, that Hummingbird that was on the stage last week, that Gibson Hummingbird, my guitar is going to drown it out no matter what volume it's played at. Why? Because of the mids. It's too out front, and I can't do anything about it. You can turn it right down and it'll still cut through. It's kind of like amplifiers. If you want an amplifier that you can play on too and cut through the most loudest and obnoxious of drummers, you buy yourself a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. I'm telling you from experience. I've never had an amp that cuts through like that. Give you an idea, I'm playing on 1.5 with the band, and the rest of the guys are still telling me there's no compression on it. It's just pure tube power. It's a 40-watt amp that the farmhouse 2 houses away are saying, man, you guys were playing loud last night. We weren't playing that loud. It's just the sound really cuts through. And you just learn this about gear by trying different stuff. This is another nice thing about jam nights. If you do get the opportunity to try other people's guitars, take it. You know, definitely take it. I can turn on my high beams. It's nighttime now. That's what, yeah, okay. Man, I thought it was getting a little bit dark out here. You know, the moon's in the sky. I should probably turn on my high beams. Yeah, there we go. Now we're cooking with gas. Yeah, so I don't know which direction I can take this blog from here, but tonight's going to be a fun night. I'm going to get there early, so I'll be on stage early and I'll be off stage early. The only thing I'm going to say for advice for people that are new to jam night, count 3 before you start your songs. I forgot to do it last week, and it cost me a song, and I'll tell you how. I started a song at way too high a tempo, okay? And the reason why I did is because I went from one song right into the next one, and I was doing a little bit of a medley and a picking, and then I just cut into it without kind of thinking before I... So I know you get this kind of, oh, I got to start the next song because the audience is waiting. Take your time, no rush, no worry. Count yourself in. Count yourself in at the right tempo. Don't go 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I did that, and you will play 1, 2, 3, 4, and you will turn your melodic song into a death metal song very quickly. You will still probably get claps from people. You know you're not doing the best you can do. Get to know your job. Your job is to entertain first, and the best way you can entertain is by being a stellar musician. The best way to be a stellar musician is by knowing your job. The best way to know your job is through practice. The best way to share is through think just before you get into it. Obviously, you're going to be a little bit nervous. I don't get nervous. I do get excited. That's my problem because I get so hyped up that I'm a little too rambunctious, ready to go. I don't get nervous anymore. I'm not a... If you follow my channel, you'll understand that I definitely am the epitome of shy. You know, I definitely could just... You could drop me into the most antisocial situation, and I'll start talking to people because why? They're there. It's rude not to. I'm a natural born attention whore. I have show-office-itis. Was brought on by Maximus Jackassius disease, which is also correlated to the I think it's funny ideology. Yeah. So you get what I'm getting at. I have no problem in front of people. I tend to like to work the crowd. Work with the crowd. They're there. They're there for your entertainment too, you know. I mean, you're going up there to enjoy yourself first. And if you enjoy yourself, they will. But take your time. So that's my lesson for tonight is I do tend to shred a bit on my guitar. That's one of the main reasons why I don't just use the house guitars all the time. It's because I know if I break a string on them, even though the guy's got 2 other guitars sitting there, it's like I don't want to be the guy to break the string. I want to use that. I want to use that Gibson when I'm playing something soft, but they're going to go through the, you know, when they go through the problem, basically setting my guitar up, you know, unless they plug in 2 guitars at the same time, it really, yeah, I'm going to use my guitar, you know, because I can shred on that, and if I break a string, big deal, you know, like I really ain't going to sweat it. And I didn't even bring any spare strings with me. That's why I want to get the 12 string, so I don't have to worry about and I've used the 12 string several times with broken strings on it for weeks on end. Played games, did this, did that. And but the 12 string I had was a real piece of junk. It was about as cheap as you could get. And I sold it because, well, I put that money towards my Ibanez AL10. But why did I buy the 6 string and not the 12 string version? Number 1, it wasn't there. Number 2, the next 12 string that I was going to buy was a beautiful sounding J200 style Epiphone. Beautiful, beautiful guitar. And this thing was in blue. Yeah, as lame as that sounds, it was in blue, and it fit all the other bill. And I was like, okay, well, I need a good 6 string anyway. I already had the 12 string, and it was like, okay, well, or the double neck. So I was like, okay, well, that'll be my 12 string. But then I got rid of the double neck, so now I'm looking to get another 12 string, maybe in the near future. Where the hell am I going? Oh, it's down there. Yeah. It's like, okay, I've driven this highway. I've ridden this highway since I was a kid. Okay, and do I know where I'm going? Nah, sometimes. Sometimes. I don't know why that is. Don't run people over. This is the people I met last week. I think. Oh my God, it's going to be a full house. Where? Well, the good news, I'm going to park right here. I don't have to park in the dumpster this time. Last time I had to park by the dumpster. I didn't mind, but it felt like trash. I'm kidding. I didn't feel like trash. Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be a fun night. Yeah, have yourselves a great night, because I'm going to. And be true to yourselves, be true to others, always do the right thing. Have yourselves a great day, eh?